Hello, I'm Nora Shabazi, the founder of EBLI, and this video is to give some information about something that I've been asked about a whole lot lately, which is research on EBLI and EBLI data. Now, I'm going to be talking mostly about a research study that was done through University of Michigan, go Blue, back in 2015, and virtually no one has asked about it for years and years. And in recent months here, 8 years later, I've had a lot of inquiries about it. So I wanted to do a video so I wouldn't have to keep responding to the same question in a different way. So, or not in a different way, but to different people. So I'm going to share my screen, and I've got a little PowerPoint that I made, and I'm going to kind of take you through some of that, as well as some other things with EBLI, including data that we'll share with you in this in the comments of this video too. Okay. All right, so get this ready there. There we go. So EBLI research and data. In this video, most of all, what I'm going to talk about is our University of Michigan EBLI study that I said was in 2015, some of the implementation challenges, as well as what changed as a result of this study with EBLI. So that's what we're going to talk mostly about, and then a few other things about research and data at the end of this. So here was the summary of this data that basically it tells you about how there's 63 teachers and 2nd through 5th grade teachers that taught EBLI. 25 of them were the treatment group, and then the rest were the control classrooms. And during the 2014-15 school year, in the last line there, you see the teacher survey responses and interviews with program staff suggest that several implementation challenges may have played a role in the null findings, which is true. So as you will find out, if you go on the internet and search EBLI U of M research, you'll see that it says that there's null findings with the whole 25 group. That's what I'm going to talk about here and why that is. So here were some of the challenges that we had with this study. Now, what had happened, how it started actually, was a charter school authorizer, a university that has about 100, maybe more than 100 charter schools, mostly throughout Michigan, but also around the country, had been using EBLI for about 5 years. We, at the time, did in-person training, 3-day trainings, and we had done, at that time, we were also using a model of train the trainer, where others were doing training in EBLI. Not very widespread, we kind of were piloting that. And 2 of our trainers were with this organization and would train teachers in the charter schools that this organization authorized. So they had for 5 years been providing training for a high percentage, probably about 75% of their schools, of people who wanted it at a greatly discounted price. So they wanted to do some research on it to see, to show people why they were so into doing this and the kind of results that they were getting. So Brian Jacob was the researcher, amazing researcher from University of Michigan, and he, the person in charge of this authorizer organization, knew him and knew of him. And so he needed at least 25 classrooms, and we decided to do 2nd through 5th. I'm not really remembering why we did that, grade classrooms. And so what this authorizer did is approach the schools that hadn't been interested in EBLI training before and asked for volunteers to be a part of this research. And so they got 2 schools, and then the other 5 were kind of, I think coerced is too hard of a, firm of a word, but they were strongly encouraged by the head of the authorizer to take part in this training. So we ended up with 7 schools, all of them in inner city schools. And 4 of them were in Detroit, 1 in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 1 in Battle Creek, and 1 in Grand Rapids. So we trained the teachers for over 3 days. Now, what happened was that there was an organization in Michigan that was going to fund the training. So the training and the coaching and the research and all of that good stuff, which was exciting. But then they wanted an EBLI center, intervention center in Detroit for us to actually, to be part of their agreement to fund the research, which wasn't feasible. So we couldn't do that. So we had no funding. So we basically did, all of this research was done with $0. The University of Michigan did their part for free. We did the EBLI piece, the training, the coaching, all of that for free also. So that was a little bit of a challenge. And then the choice of the schools. So the teachers went through 3 days of training. They had 3 times of coaching in their classroom for an hour each over the course of the year. And some of the hindrances with that were that, well, for the first coaching that started like 10 weeks after they were trained, one school hadn't started at all. They hadn't gotten whiteboards or markers. Another one had 9 different reading initiatives that they had in that school. Many of them were new and they were very overwhelmed. We had a couple of schools that were really, really, they did EBLI very well and implemented it really, really well. So, and some had statistically significant gains actually, but Brian said we could not tease those out because it had to be all 25 classrooms at once. So 2nd through 5th grade wouldn't do that again to start with a research and have that many classrooms either, but I learned a lot through this research. Another challenge that we had was assessment. The initial plan was to do NWEA, DIBELS, and MEP, which is the Michigan State Test. And so we had triad of assessments to look at. What happened was all of the schools did the NWEA. They had to do that as a requirement of the authorizers or the authorizer. DIBELS was optional. So many of the classrooms and schools did not opt to do that. So we didn't have DIBELS data. And that year, the state test changed from the MEP to the M-STEP. So we didn't have state data either. So all we had was the NWEA, which was good to have. But it wasn't what the intention was when we started out. So that was another challenge. So many of these were the challenges. I'm going to talk about many of the lessons learned through EBLI too in just a little bit. But another piece on this, at the same time, Brian Jacob was doing research on, it was called EBLI Core and then Reading Core. A little background on this. These were AmeriCorps programs that I had been approached by the state of Michigan who had been doing Reading Core, and the head of AmeriCorps for overseeing at the state level was concerned that they were not seeing growth in the students that they would like. So asked me if I would create something through EBLI to provide EBLI Core for AmeriCorps volunteers. And I did. So it was with the intention at first that EBLI was going to replace Reading Core, but it ended up for many reasons that there were both. So this, during the same research year, they were going to look at DIBELS scores for EBLI Core and Reading Core, which they did at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year, which EBLI showed a lot higher gains, than the Reading Core implementation that had been in place for quite some time. But then many of the schools did not do the DIBELS testing at the end or did not submit it anyway. And so that study just never happened. It couldn't go through because they didn't have the data. So a lot of things went on in this year and a lot of things were, like I say, a lot of lessons learned. So here are some of the things that happened to EBLI because of this this study. And I was really thrilled because we wouldn't have known these things if we hadn't had this research study done. So that was really exciting. One of them was we used to do our EBLI training in person with all of our classroom teachers in the same room of all grade levels, and intervention was a different training when we did that. But classroom teachers, we switched from 3 days of in-person training over the course of several years actually to online training. And then in February of 2020, we moved to all online instruction. So all of our teacher training, student instruction, support, lessons, everything is online. And so the teachers got to have the training as a drip instead of a fire hose. And that really has been the best shift now that I can look back and it's in, behind us that we've ever made. And that was probably the number one thing that came out of this whole experience in seeing how do we help teachers and support them and make it easy to implement EBLI in a way that isn't overwhelming and that they can, remember everything that they're needing to do. And so we have a lot of things that we have done, very revolutionary things actually for that. Our training, again, the content is pretty much the same. How it's delivered is completely different, as well as our lessons. We have a lot of student-facing PD is what it's been called, meaning that there's videos of when there's new activities for teachers to teach. There's videos of the instruction that they can turn on and the teacher facilitates. So the student is getting the instruction while the teacher is also learning, but not having to teach that activity until further along in their lessons. And then the materials overhaul too. We separated all of our trainings. Kindergarten is a separate training, first grade is a separate training, second grade is a separate training, that type of thing. So that was another wonderful outcome of that. We added more rigor to what we share with administrators and parents and supporting them too, which was something we really didn't have back in 2015. So that was an exciting thing. And also our coaching. We went to online coaching, live online at least once a month, and that as well as a Facebook group, and also the coaching built in with over 3,000 videos of the instruction happening in whole classrooms and small groups and one-on-one at all grade levels for teachers to have access to all the time. So really decreasing the load on teachers and helping them become, more adept and automatic at teaching EBLI. So those are some of the things that happened as a result of that. So that's the University of Michigan story. And you can read, like I said, the whole long, lots of pages of that study online if you would like to access that. Current research opportunities. Oopsie, wait a minute, did I not change my screen here? Let's see. I did not, but I will tell you about them. Our current research opportunities is we had an EIR grant. So interesting because I remember writing that. That's okay. We had an EIR grant application that just we found out recently missed by 1 point from moving on for funding to study EBLI in first grade classrooms. It was submitted by the research team at University of Virginia, headed by Emily Solari, who's amazing, and then WestEd as the evaluator. So we're going to apply for that again to study just first grade classrooms, of course, with controls and all in the next round of EIR grants. So that's really, really exciting. We've also had conversations with Haskins Lab about doing one-on-one instruction with brain imaging. So I'm real hopeful that if we can attract funding, is going to, is going to come to pass. So really am open to, if you have suggestions on researchers or research or opportunities to do that with EBLI, we are all ears and open to that. Okay. Also, I'm going to share in the comments or the description of this video here some of the data on EBLI so you can go through it. The one thing that we had done way back 2005 is had a lot of data from schools for classrooms and in one-on-one instruction gathered independently. Dr. Matt Burns from the University of Minnesota analyzed this and then gave us, this is how it's presented actually in a PowerPoint that we're going to share with you, plus a lot of other things that schools have shared with us as far as their data on EBLI over the years. We have, when we move to online training, part of our requirements for certification is that teachers give us their pre and post data so that we have that. Unfortunately, we went to that certification the year of COVID starting. So this really will be our first year that we will be able to get that data consistently from teachers. So we're excited to do that and be able to share that with people who are interested to see it. So yes, if you and again, as I said, future research, if you have any thoughts or ideas, contact us at info@ebli.com. We're interested in researching whole class instruction, small group instruction and intervention, as well as one-on-one. So we would be happy to hear your ideas about that. All right, so thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the comments, or you can email us at info@ebli.com and we'll be sure to answer those. Thanks for listening.